So we have the wonderful Kate Knowler, or I say Knowler, Kate, you can correct me if that's right. Knowler.
Knowler. Yeah, just Knowler.
Knowler. Kate and I have had a Zoom in the past, which is great to get a catch up and to see where she's at now. So Kate, welcome to our intimate Zoom, which is going to go all over my groups and social media and stuff. Kate, I would love to get a wee update. Obviously, Kate is a registered nutritionist, an author, and a mum of two, which is amazing. How you juggle that, I don't know, but you could maybe tell us.
Yeah.
And as a mum of a boy that's 12 as well, I know what it's like running your own business and stuff, which is really real for a lot of people. A lot of my clients actually are running their own businesses, and they say, how do you do it? Well, how do you do it?
Yeah.
That's probably an important part to cover. But Kate, can you give us a wee update on where you're at since the last time we spoke?
Yeah, so I think last time we spoke, I'd just written my first book, and I was just sort of getting into working with clients and, you know, really working on blood test interpretations with clients. So my first book is all about fatigue, interpreting iron, B12, thyroid function, vitamin D, that side of the blood testing. And then last year I did some research. I took a week off work and I wrote my second book, which is all about male and female sex hormones. So testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, LH, FSH, all those key hormones. And now I'm looking at taking another week off in March, April sometime to write a book all about cholesterol, cardiovascular disease, blood sugars, those kind of things. So diabetes will come into there as well. So I'm really excited for that. Really excited.
Brilliant. So the first book was called Blood Labs.
Yeah, Blood Labs 1 for fatigue, yeah.
And this second book is?
Called Blood Labs 2 for male and female sex hormones.
Cool. And where could people, I know we've done a bit on...
So you can get them on Amazon. Amazon is the easiest place. So you just search by my name, or you search for Blood Labs 1 and Blood Labs 2. Or the other place you can go is to my website, kateknowler.co.uk, and I've got a few signed copies available there. But it's the same price. No, you don't save any money, but it's just that I've signed a few copies. So if someone wants a signed copy, then they're available on my website. Or if you just prefer not to give money to Amazon, then I've paid out the cost price to Amazon and I get the rest of the money. Okay,
cool. And in terms of where you're working from at the moment, give us a wee insight into where you are in the world.
So I'm in London. I've got my own clinic on Devonshire Road, which is just by Liverpool Street Station. So when we last spoke, I was at Fenchurch Street, and I know you did a live stream of me taking your blood a couple of years ago, which was a really cool thing. And I've always told people I once went with this PT, she live streamed me. It was really weird. But probably the only time I've ever been live streamed doing a blood draw. Now, so that was Fenchurch Street, and now I'm literally 10 minutes up the road back at Liverpool Street. So it's quite noisy. You can probably hear it going on outside. It's lunch break. Everyone's up and down the street getting their takeaways, but it means I'm right in the hub of where my clients are as well, which is quite nice.
Fantastic. That's great. And are most of your clients nearby in London, or do you do what I do? Do you work with people online and give advice?
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone wants to have a blood draw done, I'll do that face-to-face with them, or they can arrange their own phlebotomist to go and get a blood draw done where they live. And then I do the consultation either face-to-face if they're in anyway, or I'll do it by Zoom if that's easier. So Zoom works if you've had doctor's bloods done. So you've had a blood test done with your doctor and you want them interpreting. So I do an appointment, which is £100. You send me your GP's blood results. We then have a Zoom session where we just talk through what are your symptoms, what was the reason for having those bloods done, and then I try and explain them in context with your symptoms. It's not just normal means normal. Normal means average. Are you average, or do you want to be better than that? Do you want to be optimal? And if you want to be optimal, then you need to have them interpreted and explained for you.
Brilliant. Cool. So I suppose there's lots of women, excuse me, I work with every single day, every single week, every single month, actually, right through the year. And I think for me, it's of a major concern that women go to the doctor, symptomatic of something or not, and get these blood lab reports and don't know how to interpret them, what they mean. We do lots of work on Feel Look Be, but again, it's a one-to-many program as opposed to a one-to-one program. So it's quite difficult, but people do come to us every single day to interpret these results. Yeah. So I suppose, Kate, if I was to be a client of yours, which I am actually, what would if I go to the doctor and I have symptoms, say I've got fatigue, what are the main points that that you should think I should be talking to my doctor about? What should I be asking for? Because I know you get basic testing, and I know you get a more comprehensive test. So as far as you're concerned, as a client, what should I ask for?
So if you go to your doctor and you say, I feel tired or I'm fatigued, they'll probably tell you to get more sleep. Are you waking up in the night? But what we really need is some blood testing. We need to look at your thyroid function. If your thyroid is underactive, that will affect your energy. It will affect your metabolism, your body temperature, your hair. So if you've got those kind of feeling dry skin, dry nails, dry hair, if you're very, very tired, if you're gaining weight, if you feel cold, I'd be suspecting thyroid. If you're feeling tired, but you're also a bit breathless on stairs, like can't catch my breath on stairs, it's really hard. Not a fitness question here. This is a question of gravity when you're going upstairs. Perhaps you're a bit forgetful. Maybe you're getting pins and needles in your hands or your feet. Maybe you're feeling a bit lightheaded if you stand up too quickly. If those are the kind of symptoms you're experiencing, then B12, folate, and iron would be the markers to get checked. Iron is a difficult one with the NHS. Now, in Scotland, it may be different, but I know in England, the NHS will mainly only test serum ferritin, which is your iron stores, which is great. Like, it tells us a little bit of information, but you can get falsely raised iron stores if you've got inflammation or an infection. So if you've had COVID, you'll see your ferritin is quite high. What we need to see is your iron level. And the NHS in England certainly won't test iron unless they think you've got an iron overload. So if they think you've got too much iron, they might test iron. But otherwise, they'll just test your iron stores. So it's not 100% reliable. B12, relatively easy to get. If you've been taking any B12 supplements, though, you'll get a falsely raised B12. And you need to be taking the right form of B12 in order to get that nutrient into your cells. If you're taking a cheap form of B12, it will just sit in your serum, in your blood, and it will cause a raised reading in your blood results. And then serum folate. So folate comes from foliage. So if you're not eating your leafy greens, then you probably want to get your folate levels checked. If your folate is low and you've got high cholesterol, it's not a good picture, because that means your homocysteine will be raised. It's a very inflammatory picture. So we want to keep that folate nice and high. So the more foliage you can eat, the better, is what I say to all my clients.
Brilliant. So I'm just thinking, this is probably quite a lot for a lot of people to take in. I suppose I've got a list of potential tests, if you like, in front of me here. Do you mind if I just run through them and then you could tell me if you think you need to ask for that, or would that be covered in a basic blood test? The first one is HbA1c. So that's a marker of type 2 diabetes. If you're over a certain age, probably over about 30, doctors normally jump on out and do it anyway. If they ask you, do you have a balanced diet? And you say, not really. Or if you're a smoker, if you drink alcohol, they'll probably test it for you. You should be able to ask for it as well. HbA1c, it's called glycated hemoglobin. I don't know if you want to know, but essentially it's all the red blood cells that have got glucose stuck to them. If you've got too much glucose or sugar in your blood, sticks it to the red blood cells, and that's the test that they're doing there. Cool, brilliant. And could be a sign of pre-diabetes or even type 2 diabetes. Exactly. Yeah. So that's definitely worthwhile to have in. Yeah, cool. C-peptide. Okay, so C-peptide alongside cholesterol markers, it's not one I specialize in. It's not one because we can't get it on the NHS, so I don't specialize in it. You're not going to get it on a standard test. You're going to have to do that privately. So you would need to ask, so you need to go to a clinic and get that privately taken. Okay. Exactly. Pay for that privately. And in your opinion, Kate, do you think that that's a valuable test to have done? So on the NHS, a standard kind of cholesterol panel would be total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, triglycerides. If any of that's raised, you've got a problem. But it's the environment that cholesterol lives in. And looking at C-peptide, looking at HbA. I've lost you there, Kate. A1C, looking at blood pressure, looking at the live detail, and understand your body A1C really. So C-peptide, Kate, do you think that's a valuable test to be to have done? Yeah, I think it's valuable to do. I just think you're going to struggle to get it done through an NHS doctor. It's not a standard test. You might have it done if you're seeing like a cardiac specialist. If you've got heart disease, if you've got severe problems, they may do it then. But as a standard routine, I'd like to check my cholesterol. All they're going to do is check your cholesterol. And those numbers in your cholesterol panel, sometimes they can be raised and they can look scary. But the environment your cholesterol lives in, that's really important. So your HbA1c, those blood sugar levels, that
so it's a marker of diabetes, your C-peptide, your lifestyle, whether you drink alcohol, whether you smoke, your blood pressure level. This is all more important than those just specific cholesterol numbers. The C-peptide, yes, it's good to have it done. Can you get it done? Not easily. You'd have to do it privately.
Privately, cool, brilliant. And next one, vitamin D.
Oh, yes. So I don't know about Scotland, but in London, the doctors now say you live in London, you work in London, your vitamin D will be low, just take supplements. They won't test it, and the labs are refusing to test it. They just feel it's a waste of time and money. It's going to be low. So what I would say is test your vitamin D every sort of 3 to 4 months through the year, because it will change through the year. Sometimes I get clients in clinic and they say, oh, I had vitamin D tested 2 years ago, I was low. And that's great, but they were low 2 years ago. What have they done since then? Have they been on holiday? Have they spent more time outside? If they don't know their levels now, we just test it straight away. Like I say, difficult through a doctor unless they've got a history of deficiency, or we can argue that it may be a deficiency. So I would normally say do it privately. It's about £25–30 to do it privately, but you can normally bind it in with other panels that you're doing relatively cheaply.
Okay. And Kate, I know you're working privately, but would you say that is the best way to go to get a comprehensive report done? It appears when we go to the doctor, it's kind of basic.
Yeah.
We can be selective as to what tests we can do, what to test for, and you could recommend.
Exactly. So if you go and see your doctor, you get what they can justify. We've got the NICE guidelines in London, and it's very strict about what they can or can't do. So like ferritin and iron, they just can't choose iron unless there's a problem. So yeah, if you go privately, it's much better. You don't have to see a nutritional therapist. You can do it yourself. So websites like MediChecks or Blue Horizon Medicals, you'll be able to order yourself just through the website without seeing a nutritional therapist or a specialist or anyone. You just order a blood panel. Some of them you can do as a finger prick. So you just prick your finger and you squeeze the blood into a small bottle. Other ones, you'll need to find a phlebotomist, but they also offer phlebotomy services. So you can choose to use Superdrug, and they'll have a phlebotomist. Phlebotomist is someone who takes blood. They'll have a phlebotomist in a Superdrug near you. You can go to that Superdrug and have your blood taken. So that's quite a handy service. And results only take 2 to 4 days to come back. So it's not overly expensive, but it gets you the results.
And so for example, if I'm a client, if I was to go to Superdrug, can they test everything that you would recommend?
You would need to buy the panel from Blue Horizons or MediChecks first,
okay.
And then take it to the phlebotomist at Superdrug.
Good, that's great to know. So that was vitamin D. Where am I now? A lipid panel. Now I've done a lot of research into this myself, and I know you have too, which is amazing. But a lipid panel could be hugely misleading, couldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Especially for people on keto diets, for people who exercise. You're going to get lots of abnormal results. And even if you do a blood test for your doctor, they often don't tell you to fast on that day. So they send you off for a routine blood test, you have your breakfast, you have your cup of tea, whatever you're having, go off and have your blood test done. And it comes back with really high cholesterol, really high triglycerides. And you think, well, I'm healthy, like what am I doing wrong? And actually it's just because you've just eaten, and the food that you've eaten is skewing your blood results. So it's important that you fast before you have a blood test taken, just to be sure that you're getting that fasted result, which is your lowest result that you'll see. Yeah.
So one of the common issues that women have that I certainly work with that have elevated cholesterol, Kate, is they've gone to the doctor, their total cholesterol is elevated, and that's really all they know. So in terms of interpreting those results, it sends people into a bit of a blind panic sometimes. And I spend time with them in the background with the team, breaking these test results down. They go back to speak to the doctor, so it opens up some sort of dialogue. But right now, I feel doctors are talking at people because they don't know what to look for, what to ask for. So this conversation between me and you is really great for people to hear, because what should they be asking for? What would you tell people? So I'm your client, go to the doctor, come back to you and say, Kate, my total cholesterol is elevated. What do I do?
So when I've written book 3, there'll be a little checklist of things to test around this. But the first thing to check would be your HbA1c, your type 2 diabetes marker. If that's raised for pre-diabetic or diabetic, we need to address that, address your diet, address your lifestyle. Then we would check your folic acid or your folate levels. If that's low, that leaves you open to inflammation. Check your ferritin levels. If they're very raised, that's inflammation or infection. That just creates an inflammatory environment. Check your blood pressure. If your blood pressure is high, that's an inflammatory environment. You can check your uric acid. Uric acid is often raised when there's a diet that's high in sugars, unbalanced blood sugars, alcohol, those kind of things. If uric acid is raised, inflammatory environment. The cholesterol itself isn't the problem. I like to think of cholesterol as the fireman. So there's a fire and cholesterol comes along to put the fire out. Cholesterol didn't cause the fire. Don't blame cholesterol for the fire. Find the cause of the fire and put the fire out. Don't blame cholesterol. So what doctors will often do is leave your diet and leave, not yours necessarily, but the person's diet and lifestyle alone and put them on statins. And obviously cholesterol comes down. Fantastic, great, cholesterol's come down. Side effects, what a shame, never mind, but your cholesterol's down. But the fire is still burning, like that fire is still there. They still need the statins to fight the fire. Just put the fire out. Like, if you know where the fire is, put the fire out. So it's finding that fire is really important.
Absolutely. When my clients learn more about cholesterol and how to maybe have a conversation with the doctor, some of my clients, Kate, have never been leaner, have never been healthier, have come off of metformin, for example. The doctor's taken them off of metformin and they go and they have this elevated cholesterol. And at no point was the triglyceride to HDL ratio discussed. At no point was VL. And so for me, it really is a problem, because in terms of statins and the doctor presenting that, when this client's never felt healthier, it's battle, and these women sometimes go to me, what do I do here? Like, you're not a doctor though, Shelley. And I said, no, I'm not. But so what do we do?
There's a website, I think it's qrisk.org. So the letter Q, risk.org. And it's a questionnaire. Now, your doctor should be using this before they put you on statins, but very often they're not. Very often they go, high cholesterol, take a statin. They get money in their pocket. But that's a skeptical part of me, but I'm sure that's what's going on. If you put your data through the Q-risk questionnaire, it will ask you, do you get migraines? Have you ever had a stroke? Is there any family history of heart disease? What's your blood pressure? What's your weight? What's your height? It does all the calculations. It's an algorithm. And it's based on years of research, and it comes out with a risk score. If your score is over a certain percentage, it will recommend you do some interventions. If it's below a certain percentage, it just says low risk, not a problem. And I think it gives you your risk for 10 years. So over the next 10 years, are you likely to get heart disease? So that's what your clients can be doing, Shelley, is just going to QRisk. I'm pretty sure it's qrisk.org, but I'll find it and I'll share the link with you before you share this video. And literally it's free to use, just a website, just type your data in and it calculates it. You just click calculate and there's your score. Really.
Added to that, we also have the problem of doctors and nurses, for example, promoting healthy whole grains, which actually make blood sugar higher and kind of scare people off good, wholesome, saturated fat, avocado, nuts, and quality dairy, for example, good quality protein and foods full of fibre. So that, again, for me, is a job in itself to try and get people to understand this, not to convert them, so to speak, but just to get them to understand, because we've got health authorities fighting against that information. When do you think that might change, Kate? I know there's, I don't know if you follow various doctors and Mark Hyman and Dr. Robert Lustig and things. They're amazing, but there's only a couple of them. There's not enough to go around, and PTs and nurses and doctors on the same page. When do we get on the same page about this, or do we?
I'd probably wait about 10 to 15 years, unfortunately. We're still getting gut info is still trickling down into the NHS. Things like SIBO, bacteria, parasites, that's still trickling into the NHS. And that's been around for a good 20 years. So we're still waiting for things to trickle in. But what I would say, the problem we've got is that there's this myth that because sugar isn't found in the arteries when you've got a cholesterol issue or a heart disease issue, because sugar isn't found in the arteries, therefore it isn't sugar that causes the problem. Because fat is found in the arteries, therefore it's fat that causes the problem. But actually, when you eat sugar, that raises your triglyceride level, and those triglycerides are sent around the blood as a little messenger system, and they convert into LDL cholesterol that then gets dumped because it's very inflammatory, and that is what's causing the problem there. So the fire in that situation is sugar or processed carbohydrates, which is coming from this healthy diet of, have 8 portions of whole grains every day, and you just think, no, please don't. It's the worst thing.
And the fructose, of course, the fruit juices and the sodas.
Yeah, exactly.
So when do we then ask, sorry, last question on this, Kate, when do we then ask for the lipid profile to be further analysed if the doctor says you've got an elevated cholesterol level, we're going to look at, statins, for example. What about pattern A and pattern B and small, dense and large, buoyant and fluffy particles?
Absolutely.
When do we get into that?
So that generally isn't done on the NHS that I'm aware of. You can go and have a calcium arterial scan, which looks, so it's looking in your arteries as a scan. I think it's done as a CT scan or an MRI. It goes into the arteries and it just looks for any calcium buildup. Now, calcium buildup doesn't mean you have a problem right now, but it means you've had a problem at some point in the past and the calcium is there repairing your arteries. If your calcium score comes back at 0, fantastic, you don't have a problem. If it's coming back higher, you probably need to think about it. It's basically, are your arteries a bit furry with calcium? In which case you need to be looking after yourself a bit more. Maybe statins might be the right thing for you at that point, but otherwise, no. So that's the test that you can get on the NHS. In terms of lipoprotein A and looking at your particle sizes, it's a little bit harder. If there's a strong family history and you're under a cardiologist, maybe. Otherwise, you need to look privately for that. And we've got some really great tests that you can look at. One is by a lab called Nordic Labs. The test itself is £150, but then you need a phlebotomist that can centrifuge it, so can spin it on site. And that tends to cost like £80 to £100 for that service. But once you get that blood sample, and once you've got those results from the lab, it tells you the whole breakdown of the fractions and subtypes of your LDL cholesterol, how many were pathogenic, how many were non-pathogenic. And that's a really, really useful test.
Great. Okay, that's useful. Just kicking into, I'm just thinking about my own family history. My dad had atherosclerosis, which was narrowing of the artery, but he was a very heavy drinker for years and years, heavy smoker. But my dad was skinny fat, Kate. So you had metabolic disease.
Yeah. Just one second. That's my door. Sorry.
So, Kate, yeah, I lost my dad when he was 56 due to narrowing of the arteries, heart failure really caused through a really, really poor lifestyle. But to the eye, my dad was very slim. I think there's a huge misconception there that you have to be overweight or obese, metabolically unhealthy, if you like. You wouldn't look at my dad and think he's got heart disease, he's got a metabolic issue going on. If you didn't know that he was a heavy drinker, you wouldn't know any different. So can you kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, it's another myth. So just like sugar isn't found in the arteries, so therefore sugar isn't the problem. There's a myth that fat causes the problem, and so fat people are going to have more cholesterol problems. And it's just like, stop this. This is ridiculous. You can't tell anything about a person without doing a blood test. One person's fatigue is going to be caused by a different thing to the next person's fatigue. One person's skin issue is caused by a different thing to the next person's skin issue. One person's heart is just like, you can't compare it to the next person's heart without doing a blood test. So honestly, for every client, if nothing else, we do a basic MOT with looking at cholesterol, looking at blood sugars, looking at iron levels, looking at B12, because it's really important to get that kind of base level and know what you're dealing with, because sometimes there are no symptoms of heart disease. And like you say, Shelley, some people are going through this and they have no idea that they've got these problems. Blood pressure itself, until it's really bad, you have no symptoms.
Yeah, I think also, Kate, because some people, there's again a misconception that some people think they can eat anything. It doesn't tell on them. So actually, they're okay to eat anything. In fact, they're more likely to have problems that they can't even see, because you can't see it physically in terms of body fat. So that's a bit of a worry as well. Skinny fat, I call it. And that's not fat shaming in any sense. That's just internally fatty, but to the eye, not fat at all.
So a really good test for those kind of people is a fasting insulin test. Just how much insulin is it taking to keep your body thin right now? If it's a lot, so if your fasting insulin is coming back really high, it can't do that forever. It's not going to do that forever. It's going to stop at some point, and you're going to have every metabolic thing going. So fasting insulin test, again, there's a finger prick test you can do. It's a little blood spot card. So you prick your finger, you squeeze some blood onto a card, send it away to the lab. It's not perfect. Blood spots never are perfect, but it's the best we've got privately at the moment outside of London. And that can be a really nice test to do.
Brilliant. Cool. What about tests for inflammation? What would you recommend we ask for if we spoke to the doctor?
So looking at inflammation, so there's two main markers of inflammation, which are CRP, C-reactive protein, and ESR, erythrocyte, so red blood cells, erythrocyte sedimentation rate. I love ESR. I love the theory that someone sits in the lab and they put a red blood cell into some water and they watch it sink for an hour and they measure the number of millimeters that it sinks. There's a bit of me that hopes no one has to do that anymore, that it's all computerized, but I do think it's a bit of a manual test at the moment still. So they measure the number of millimeters your blood cell sinks in 1 hour, and that's reported as millimeters per hour. So they're two main markers. You'd also want to look at other things that might raise if there's inflammation. So HbA1c, you might see raised triglycerides, you might see raised ferritin, so very raised ferritin with normal or low iron. I think they would be the main ones. Uric acid, we mentioned earlier, can raise if there's inflammation.
Okay, so I suppose it's like a jigsaw, isn't it? It's minimizing and piecing together various pieces of information that we've got. Okay, ferritin.
Yeah. So serum ferritin is your iron stores. If you're in an inflammatory process, or if you're have an infection, even cancer can cause it, your body doesn't want to feed it anymore. It doesn't want to feed iron to that process. So it will take all your serum iron, your usable serum iron, and shove it all into storage. And that's why when we have an iron panel done, if you're just testing serum ferritin and you get a normal or raised serum ferritin, it doesn't mean your iron's raised. It might mean that everything's in storage iron, unavailable to the body, because there's a problem in the body and the body's trying to hide all the iron away from that problem, whether it's COVID, whether it's high blood sugars, whether it's high blood pressure, the body's hiding that iron away for a reason.
Okay, cool. And here's a question that I've been asked before as well. So if we draw blood, obviously that's what's shown is in the bloodstream, but what if we are trying to get on a cellular level? What's the difference in the various tests? If you know what I mean, what is there one more accurate than the other, or is there certain things contained within that cell that won't be in the bloodstream? How do we
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do things like serum B12. I think this is what you mean. So you can do serum B12, which is the B12 in your bloodstream, or you can do active B12, which is the activated converted B12. That's more available for your cells. Serum folate, very similar. You can see the folate that's in your bloodstream. If you've eaten a meal just before you take a blood draw, and that meal was a green smoothie or some green veggies, your serum folate will be raised. If you do red blood cell folate, that's how much folate is actually in your blood cells. Serum magnesium versus red blood cell magnesium, the same thing. And there's a few other markers like that. But again, for those red blood cell markers, you either need to see a hematologist on the NHS or you need to go private.
Okay, cool. What about the liver? So the liver, for me, the fatty liver is obviously more prevalent than anybody ever talks about. Not just, non-alcoholic, but alcoholic fatty liver as well. So what's the test for that? Liver function tests?
Exactly.
What's the ranges for that, Kate?
Yeah, so a liver function test is a really good place to start, and you need to encourage the doctor to do all the liver enzymes, not just ALT or just AST. We want ALT, we want AST, and we want GGT. There's 3 enzymes that we need to see. GGT is more likely to be raised if there's alcoholic fatty liver disease, but if there's even non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, you'll see a raised GGT, but it'll be higher if there's alcohol. And that can also be raised GGT. If you had a drink the day before you had your blood draw done, your GGT will be raised when you test your blood. So they're your markers you want to look at. The ranges I like to see for all 3 of those would be anywhere between 10 and 20. I'll accept sort of 25, but anything over that, I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? Those enzymes are made in the liver and they're stored in the liver. If they're raising in the serum, there's liver damage. The liver's letting those out into the bloodstream, and we need to be saying why. What's making the liver unhappy and releasing those enzymes into the bloodstream, because we shouldn't be able to see them. The lower the better for those enzymes, really.
Brilliant. And in your books, Kate, see for all these tests, and the range, the reference ranges, are they in one of your books or both?
So in the first book, you've got all the iron, B12, folate, vitamin D, full blood count, thyroid, all of those optimal ranges are in there, and how to ask your doctor for the relevant test is in there as well. And in the second book, it's all the male and female sex hormones. So estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, LH, FSH, all of that's in there for men and women optimal ranges.
Brilliant. Great. Okay, one question on the menopause and perimenopausal women.
Yeah.
So I talk to people about this a lot, but it'd be really useful to get your take on what's happening, what to do, who to speak to. So hot flushes, night sweats, urinary tract infections, libido's gone, mood is all over the place, just feeling really, really flat, run down, tired, depressed a lot of the time. And this is predominantly what women feel. Mid-40s, lots and lots of my clients feel like this. Now, obviously, well, in fact, I'm going to ask you, what's happening with the body at this age, at 40, I'm 44, 45, 46, up until sort of 50? What's happening? What's going on?
So I'm going through this myself at the moment. We've got two main hormones as a woman. We've got progesterone and we've got estrogen. These kind of go like this through the month, and that helps us to ovulate and to have our period. What happens towards perimenopause is your progesterone, it just does this, it just comes down and it stays down. So over a period of about 10 years, it slowly comes down. This makes you feel a bit unbalanced. Progesterone, I like to think of it as like a nice warm hug. That's the one that makes you feel safe, secure, and happy. That's coming down. Your estrogen, on the other hand, is going like this. It hasn't got a clue what it's doing. It's all over the place, having a final fanfare before it goes down with your progesterone. So that process, that kind of coming all the way down, that could take a month. It could take 10 years. It could take longer. And for some people, that is really uncomfortable. I know for me, I was suicidal when mine started last year. It really was unpleasant. It was really, really unpleasant. So I've gone on HRT now just to replace my estrogen, but mainly my progesterone. My progesterone is back up here. My estrogen's kind of doing this now. It's a much smoother process rather than erratic. But for some people, they don't want to, or they can't take HRT. And that's absolutely fine as well. You don't have to have HRT. There should be no pressure to take HRT. If you don't want to take HRT, then the things to rule out are stimulants, tea, coffee, sugar, to stop stimulating your body, because it's going to be on its own roller coaster. You've got a roller coaster here with estrogen, you don't want to be on a stimulant roller coaster as well. You're just going to give yourself hot sweats, mood swings, things like that. Look after your thyroid to get a good thyroid check, make sure everything's happy there. Get your blood sugars checked, make sure you haven't got a blood sugar roller coaster, so that's your HbA1c, maybe your fasting insulin as well. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure you're not too stressed. So if you're really, really stressed, then look at addressing your stress levels. And they would be the main things that I would start with. There's lots more that you can do, absolutely. So you can look at using phytoestrogens in your food. So linseeds, flax seeds, sesame seeds are really nice. Red clover tea, we can use some of those. And your progesterone, so to support progesterone, there's not much you can do, but to stop it coming crashing right down. Vitamin C can be really nice. Obviously look for medication interactions just in case. So vitamin C we would do, there's a herb called Vitex or Agnus castus. Again, look for medication interactions if you're taking anything. But Vitex or Agnus castus has been shown to raise progesterone levels, so that can be really nice.
So Kate, that looks like, so in sort of relative terms, so progesterone's coming down. Estrogen's coming down a bit, but because of this drop, relatively speaking, it looks like there's maybe an estrogen dominance sort of problem.
Some months you'll get estrogen dominance, other months you're flat because everything's come down. Your estrogen's just doing this all the time, month in, month out, it doesn't know where it wants to be. Some months it'll be extra high, like you're super, super fertile. You see quite a few women conceive unexpectedly in their 40s and their 50s. And then other months it's so flat, you've got no sex drive, you've got nothing, and then it's back up again. And when it's flat like that, really down at the bottom, you're going to get vaginal atrophy, which is that dry, sore, tearing vaginal skin. So there's vaginal pessaries that you can get of estrogen, which don't impact the whole body. They're just localized to help with the tissues of the vagina. And that can lead to UTIs as well when the skin's really thin and sore down there. Or otherwise, you can get various vaginal moisturizers. There's a great brand called Yes. They do an oil-based or a water-based moisturizer that you apply every day, and it's just there to lubricate the area. So it's not necessarily a sexual lubricant, but you can use that way if you want to. But it's just to keep the area moisturized. But like you put moisturizer on your face, you would moisturize your vaginal tissues as well.
Why not?
Yeah. Anti-aging.
Brilliant. So I'm thinking now about adrenal health, and obviously the adrenals are going to be, or hope should support the ovary. So what if we've got, just really stressful life, adrenal fatigue, going into perimenopausal ages, we're going to feel pretty shitty for a good part of that if our adrenals are them. So
definitely.
what we do is, what's the test to look at the adrenals?
Absolutely. You can do a saliva test to look at your adrenals. So you have some tubes and you spit into them every 4 to 6 hours for a 24-hour period. And you save up those samples, you send them back to the lab, and they give you a graph of where your cortisol is in that 24-hour period. So that's quite a nice test. It's about £100, not overly expensive. The adrenals are the only place we store vitamin C in the body. So a decent dose of vitamin C on a daily basis is really nice to support the adrenals. If they're failing, they won't be storing vitamin C. If we're using up all our adrenal resources because we're stressed, we won't be storing vitamin C. So just supplying vitamin C is a really nice one, especially if you smoke, drink, live in the city, anything like that. What else can you do to support your adrenals? Yeah, meditate, keep calm, start reducing your hours if you can, don't work long hours, just really get those boundaries in place for what you need to be doing compared to what you are doing.
Cool, brilliant. And because we are relying on those adrenals, cortisol sometimes could spike, and that kind of diminishes bone, doesn't it? Bone density and muscle, and muscles that actually turn to glucose, which is a wee bit scary.
Yeah, you get that conversion, yeah.
That's why a lot of my clients actually lose their bum muscles and lose their thigh muscles, and it's not because they're less active, it's just because the adrenals are ramped right up.
Yeah.
Perimenopause, so it's loads of things going on. Great, thank you. What about, nearly there, what about electrolytes? I talk about these every single month, electrolytes, and the importance of. What about them showing up in tests? What's your advice there?
Yeah, so easy to get through your doctor. Just go and ask for a kidney function test. It's also called urea and electrolytes, but it will look at your sodium, potassium, creatinine. It will look at your estimated glomerular filtration, which how quickly your kidney is filtering those electrolytes out of your blood. And it seems weird to test your blood for electrolytes, but the higher they go in your bloodstream, the worse your kidneys are filtering them out. So we're really looking at how is your kidney keeping the balance of electrolytes. If your sodium is too high, if your potassium is too low, you'll start to get twitchy and muscle cramps, maybe spasms, things like that.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. And one thing that you've talked about is thyroid. So what do we look at? Is it free T3? Is it free T4? Is it TSH?
Yeah.
What should we be asking for? Because I know some people won't do free T4 and free T3.
No, they won't. So I'll give you my analogy. So the TSH, it comes from a gland in the brain called the pituitary gland. So pituitary gland releases TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, which tells the thyroid what to do. So imagine the TSH is, or the pituitary gland is saying to the kids in the kitchen, can you put the kettle on, please? So, okay, put the kettle on, please. So we've told the thyroid to put the kettle on. All right, we know nothing. So just from TSH, all we know is that we've asked the thyroid to put the kettle on. Okay, now we need to know, was the kettle switched on? So that's free T4. Has the kettle been switched on? We measure free T4, and that's our inactive thyroid hormone. Has the tea been made? Well, that's free T3. So did the T4 convert to T3? Has that cup of tea been made? And we can also look at the quality of that cup of tea. Is T3 high? Is it low? What's the ratio with the T4? So just testing TSH is literally just looking at was the kettle switched on. It's not looking at the quality of that cup of tea at the end of the process. So I like to look at the whole process. What does that tea look like? What does it taste like? Is there anything going into that tea that shouldn't be in there? Antibodies, things like that. Doing a full panel like that, really easy privately, about £70, not expensive. Do it as a finger prick if you want to, or you see a phlebotomist to take that blood for you. To get it through the NHS, oh my gosh, it's like you're asking for, well, literally blood, but like literally it's the hardest thing to get in the world. They won't test it. But ironically, if you do it privately and there's a problem and you go back to your doctor with a problem, suddenly, oh, they'll test it for you. And it's like, but you wouldn't test it for me last week and now you will. It's crazy.
Yeah. So do you think it's just cost cutting? It's just I don't know why it would be a reduced
so it's statistics, isn't it? The majority of people with a thyroid issue will have a raised TSH, not everybody, but the majority. And so if they just test TSH, they'll get the majority. There's going to be plenty of us that slip through that net and have good T4 levels. There'll be plenty of us that have good TSH, good T4, but rubbish T3. And by not testing everything, they're missing out the minority. But that's, in terms of, cost cutting versus what they're actually achieving, they're happy with those stats.
Okay, cool. Useful, thank you. So what about, we're nearly there actually, Kate. What about the that's, I call it the second brain, the gut and the microbiome, and how do we actually get into there to see what's going on?
Stool testing is just the best way. Stool testing privately, not through the NHS. NHS will test you for things like E. coli, Campylobacter, major ones, Giardia, it's a parasite that you might catch when you're traveling. They won't do a detailed test. If you do a private test, it's going to test you for about 5 A4 pages worth of information: bacteria, parasites, fungal infections, inflammatory markers. It might test for something called leaky gut or intestinal hyperpermeability. I don't know if you talk about that on any of your talks. It might look at your enzyme function, your liver function, mucus, blood. It's looking at all these things in your stool sample, things that are just not done routinely on the NHS. I've had clients who've got gut issues. They've been sent to the Centre of Tropical Diseases in the centre of London. They've had loads of tests done. Everything's coming back clear. I do one stool test on them, find the parasite. We address the parasite. Things start to improve. And you just think, what if that was done in the first place? That would have been so much easier.
And Kate, what kind of symptoms would they have if there was a parasite?
So normally it's your general gut issues: bloating, constipation, diarrhea, gas, maybe blood in your stools, mucus in your stools. If there's anything like blood or mucus in your stools, do go and see the GP. Just get that ruled out. There's nothing sinister like cancer or anything like that. But if it's just sporadic here and there, then it could be caused by a parasite. And sometimes with parasites, it will be cyclical. So it might be 2 weeks really, really bad, a couple of weeks not so bad, and then 2 weeks really, really bad. And that's where the parasite is laying eggs. The actual adult parasite dies off, you wait for the eggs to hatch, the larvae to mature, and then you get your problems again. And then they hatch, and then they calm down, and it's just this cycle that you're going in. So often if someone's got cyclical symptoms, if I've ruled out menstrual cycle issues or anything like that, we can often start looking at parasites at that point. But not everyone will have cycles. Some parasites will be constant, and they're just, constantly causing an issue.
Okay. That sounds scary, doesn't it? People
it's not nice knowing you have parasites, and they're more common than you might think. Worms, I think worms are the scarier one because you can see them. I don't mind parasites, you can't see them, you can address them, but you can't see them. But worms themselves,
what do worms look like?
So pinworms is the most common one. My son had them when he was 3. It was about this big, just little sort of centimetre long white worms, and they come out at night. So itchy bottom at night is your main key there. And if you really want to get low key on that, a bit of sellotape over your bottom at night to catch any worms that come out. You peel it off in the morning. If you've got worms on there, you've got worms.
Wow.
So you don't have to do any testing, just a bit of sellotape on your bottom.
And if you've got worms, what do you do?
You can go to the doctors or even to the chemist and get worming medication, a bit like you'd worm a dog or a cat. You take worming medication for 2 weeks.
Wow. Okay. Useful.
I find them scary. I don't like creepy worms or anything, so that scares me.
Brilliant. See, do you know what, Kate? This is all so useful because it's things that people don't hear and certainly won't hear from the doctors unless they ask, and they don't know what to ask for, you see. So really useful. So a lot of my clients, I know they've been to see you already because of the work we're doing. You're still ongoing. You're doing my blood work as well, which is amazing. And Kate, you're just an amazing resource for people to have, and it's so good that we've got you. So if anybody wanted to work with you, what do we do? What do people do? Apart from you can go to my website, kateknowler.co.uk, and then it just says there, are you a client, are you a practitioner? So you just follow the client pathway and you'll find ways of getting in touch with me there. You can hook me up on Facebook, social media. So on Facebook, my name is Kate Knowler, obviously. You can find me on there. On Instagram, it's London_nutritionist, or you can look at bloodlabs.kateknowler. That's my blood side, which is more practitioner based, but you can add both or either. I don't really do any other social media. I don't understand Twitter, so I don't do it. So I don't use it much. So Kate, just before we go, you also do food intolerance testing. Yeah, absolutely. So food intolerances, food allergies. I do sensitivity testing. They're my main kind of things that I do in clinic with my face-to-face clients. Okay. So the intolerance and allergies are blood tests. We send that away to the lab. The sensitivity test I do in clinic, which is done by bioresonance, which is kind of old school, but I love it. It's what I've kind of done for a long time, so I really enjoy that. And then a lot of what I do is iron and thyroid testing, just to get them done properly. Brilliant. I'm coming down very soon to get my bloods taken by yourself, and you will help me interpret them. And from that, Kate, I would love to jump on like this again and for us to share my test results with my lifestyle membership, please, if that would be okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Insightful, and it's open book.
Yeah, absolutely. As long as you're open with like your symptoms with your like group, then that's absolutely fine. We can do that.
That'll be brilliant. Listen, thanks so much as always. You're amazing. And if anybody wants to work with you, then hook me up or look me up.
Absolutely. Just come and find me. I'm a really open person, so honestly, just come and find me, have a chat with me. I'll always make time for people, and then if we can get you into an appointment, fantastic. If I can just give you a bit of free advice, I'm more than happy to do that as well. Obviously, if 3,000 people ask me for free advice, I can't do that, but if just 1 or 2 of you are asking, I don't mind answering questions.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kate. I will be in touch.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.